How do you feel about asking questions? It can be scary, right? Well, questions are one of the themes of today's conversation. We are meeting with Laura, who is a head of marketing, and she is going to share some great information about her area of expertise, her career journey, and some wonderful advice too. We talk about taking the first step when you are afraid to start, the value in all experiences, the danger of taking things for granted, the power of understanding the context you are working in, building your personal brand within a company, building your own personal board of directors, and of course, the importance of asking questions, being willing to put yourself out there and ask. So, if that sounds good to you, listen or watch on. Laura and I look forward to seeing you there.
Hello, Laura. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Jo. Very, very nice to be here with you today.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to get to know your experience more and share that with the audience.
Oh, it's a treat. I am passionate about work. I actually hate to say it, but I love work. So getting to talk about it is actually quite a nice opportunity. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. The pleasure's all mine. Okay, well, how about we get started with a short introduction from you? Tell us about, who you are, what you do, and how long you've been doing it for.
Okay, so my name is Laura Proudest, originally from California. I always have to start with that because I think it does speak a little bit to my disposition, fairly informal, optimistic, and always looking on the bright side of things. I've worked in the asset management industry for almost 25 years. And for people who don't know what the asset management industry is, it's investing. It's not just saving money in a bank, but it's taking your savings and trying to create more money with that money by investing it in different asset classes. So that's the industry I've worked in for 25 years, spanning marketing, product development, distribution management, so sales management, operations management, but most recently, marketing, where I've been the head of marketing department.
Amazing. Thank you so much. All right. So this is a podcast, Laura. So tell us what podcasts you're enjoying right now.
Jo, I knew you were going to ask me this question. Ironically, which means I need to be very dialed into different types of media, traditional media, television, radio, social media, Instagram, podcasts, but I'm not a big consumer of media personally. I don't listen to podcasts. If I've got something in my ears, it's either because I'm talking on the telephone or I want to be listening to music. So actually, podcasts aren't a big part of what I consume personally.
Okay. Well, I might recommend a few for you to try. What about music? What music are you listening to right now?
Okay, now that's a question I enjoy answering. I've got very eclectic tastes in music, from kind of hardcore rock like Jimi Hendrix, which my younger brother turned me on to when I was a teenager, and Led Zeppelin, to softer things. We can all relate at the Christmas season to Michael Bublé, how wonderful he is, but I do enjoy that kind of music, to almost kind of operatic pop. If you've heard of Il Divo, or the other group is the young kids, what are they called? Vivo, just beautiful kind of operatic, but somewhat pop, to actually full on symphonic music, because I played the piano for many, many years. So I love a good piano concerto. So that I find that very, very relaxing. So it really does run the gamut.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Thanks for sharing. Okay, Laura, your area of expertise. Often there's misconceptions about what we do at work, which is one of the reasons why we want to put this podcast out there. So give us a sense of the misconceptions around marketing. What do your friends and family outside of the industry think you're doing all day?
Yeah, I think that's a very easy question to answer, because there are a lot of misconceptions around marketing. So I have fielded questions around marketing where people think it is purely advertising. In other words, creating ads, be they print ads or television ads, that they think it's just the simplicity of creating a television commercial that's amusing to watch or memorable. I've also heard There's an expression in our industry that marketing is the coloring in department. Again, that we're just trying to make things colorful and attractive, catering to a lowest common denominator in terms of capturing people's attention. So certainly capturing people's attention is part of marketing, but it's not at all trivial, and it is not at all limited to advertising, which is the more kind of superficial, obvious way that the average consumer encounters marketing. There's actually a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Thank you. And I think that what might be really nice, because I think marketing, similarly to HR, if people think of HR, they think it's just one job. But of course, there's many different jobs within HR. So maybe it might be nice if you could share with us an overview of a marketing department and the functions that sit within a marketing department.
Happily. And this is probably why I have come to love marketing relative to all the different jobs I've held in my career, is because of the wide variety of roles within marketing. It is a very diverse, I don't even want to call it a single function because there's so many different functions within marketing. So take the last team that I managed, for example. We had writers, so people that were trained journalists that had been actually newspaper writers. People that have written books. So writers that really have good command of the spoken word via the mechanism of reading and writing online or print. Digital marketers, the people that really know how to get content out via social media, but also know how to get content out through paid digital advertising. And that is a specialty, is understanding what people are watching and what is the mindset of somebody watching a certain social channel and the receptivity of them to certain messages, types of messages, the content of those messages. So that's digital marketing. I've also had PR people working underneath me. In other words, people that deal with the press and the media, how to make sure that positive messages are going into the media, but also how to become a friend of the media so that we can fend off negative messages. So that's a job function in and of itself. We have what we call in marketing channel marketing. So you think of who is your audience. Is it the consumer, you and me, going to a grocery store? That is a channel. Or is it a business? Is it another business that your business is marketing to? Well, that business that you're marketing to is a channel. So we have the marketers that are focusing on the type of customer or the audience or the end investor, with a very deliberate approach of thinking, how does that person use our product? How do they learn about our product? How do they consume our product? We call that channel marketing. There is event management, which is a very different type of marketing, but it absolutely is, because when you're holding an event, you are introducing somebody for the first time or reintroducing people to you, your company, your brand, your product in a one-on-one medium. In other words, people are actually coming to a physical venue to experience you somehow via a conference or a trade show. So event management is a very big part of marketing. That has evolved now to be a much more of an online function. You can hold events that are just on a computer screen, like what we're doing right now, but for many, many people. So event management is a big part of the marketing function. Another one is the more traditional things that we think about, design. You know, so people think about a logo that's coming from a creative team or design team, but there are then people that might do actual print ads or digital ads, the designers that create those. So that's a creative team. People that lay out these print articles into a brochure that includes some elements of design and some elements of print. So as you can see what I'm saying, there is such a vast array. And I haven't even touched on the information side of things. So the people that collect the data around what's working and what's not, and feed that back into the apparatus. So there's a whole data and analytics side to what we do. And there's also a financial management, budget, and planning side to what we do. So marketing is very, very diverse and varied in terms of the types of skills and the types of jobs you can have within marketing.
Wow. That's really helpful. Thank you. And I think that, if I think about my own experience growing up, at one point I thought, I'd really like to be a lawyer. But I thought, I just don't think I could defend the guilty. So maybe that's not the career for me, not knowing, of course, that there are lawyers who don't do that. So I think it's really good to break down, to share that. So thank you so much. So what does an organization, if we had to think about the headline, what does an organization rely on its marketing department for?
Fundamentally, marketing, the purpose that marketing serves fundamentally is to make people aware of the product or service that the firm offers. So awareness, first and foremost. If nobody's aware that you sell or offer a particular product or service, how can they consume it? So awareness is what marketing is typically responsible for. But then what's the next step beyond awareness? Is wanting you to actually consider buying that product or service. So what we call the marketing funnel. Awareness is at the top of the funnel. And then we want you to consider. So we want you to know enough about the product or service so that you would actually consider buying it.
Yeah.
And then the next step is preference. So in other words, if you're out there looking for a pair of running shoes, we want you to know the different types of running shoes available, Nike, Adidas, New Balance. When you're considering buying shoes, we want to be one of the shoe brands you consider. But when it comes time for you to actually make that choice, we want to be the brand that you prefer. So we want you to show preference for us. In other words, we need to make sure you know enough about our product that you actually start to show a bias or preference for wanting to buy our product or service. And then, of course, we want you to actually buy something from us. So purchase, so intent. So in other words, we in marketing are responsible for what we call the marketing funnel. For building awareness, hoping you consider our product, hoping that when it comes closer to your decision that you'll start showing a preference for us so that actually you will purchase or show purchase intent for our product and service. And then when you need another one or you want to refer a friend, you buy from us again, or you tell your friends to buy from us because that word of mouth marketing is very valuable. So that's in a nutshell, filling this marketing funnel is how we think about our function for an organization.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you. That's a really helpful way of thinking about it. Thanks. So, Laura, if we were to zoom into an average day or week in the role, what might we find you doing?
The best part of being a senior leader in a marketing organization is that no 2 days are alike.
Yeah.
I love the variety. And if you are somebody that likes variety and you want to be surprised every day, or you just don't enjoy routine, then marketing is a wonderful job for you because there are certain things that we can predict in terms of the marketing plans that we want to put into place and things that we want to execute on. But marketing needs to also be responsive to the marketplace. In other words, we need to take in information from what's happening in the marketplace that can be influenced by either what our customers are telling us or what our competitors are doing or what the marketplace at large, the economy, for example, is doing. And so that kind of push-pull, or I guess finding that balance between the roadmap that we can visualize and have planned for ourselves versus being able to be responsive to any bumps in the road or unexpected things that come across our path or our proposed roadmap is part of marketing. So being able to take into account the unexpected so that we can still reach our objective, but it might not be 100% the way we mapped it out. So that's the kind of variety. So to answer your question more specifically, as a head of marketing, a lot of my day will be spent meeting with people, the various members of my team and the various constituents that offer those inputs into what my team does and how we might need to be a little bit more flexible or change our roadmap in order to accommodate what's new in the marketplace. A lot of meetings. essentially is what I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah. So meeting with other, I guess, stakeholders within the business, and then your team, who are leaders of leaders in general.
That's right. So I will be hearing from the sales force. So if they are getting feedback on what's going on in the marketplace, maybe something big happened last week, I want to hear from them how their clients are responding to them about our product and their ability to, buy it, consume it based on what big news happened last week. I also want to hear from those that have client service knowledge based on what they're seeing digitally, the interactions with people on a social media, on the website. So I'm getting inputs then from my data and analyst people saying, how good did the plans that we put into place last week, last month, how are they performing? So should we be continuing exactly on the plan with those same tactics, or should we be changing our tactics? So it's getting feedback iteratively along the way and new input just to help recalibrate whether or not what we're doing is fit for purpose.
Yeah, that's great. And if we've talked about kind of executing on the plan there, but being flexible to surprises that might come up. For audience members who aren't quite familiar, could you just give us a sense of what the planning process might look like? What factors might need to be considered if we're planning out for the next year and the year after, for example?
Yeah, so I will break that down. I'll take, for example, our direct-to-consumer channel. When we're talking to customers, end investors, not business to business, a business plan, when we are talking about direct-to-consumer, might involve campaigns. So thinking about when the consumer is likely to buy. So for financial services product, tax season is a big time of year, just like for consumer goods, the Christmas season might be a big time of year. So you kind of plan your thinking around trying to get in the head of the consumer. When are they thinking about buying a product or service that our firm sells? And so then we have to go backwards from that to try and think, how do we make sure that when that time comes, they're aware of us, they're willing to consider us, they know enough about us to show some preference. So basically we work backward from when the most likely buying cycle is. If it's year round, then you start from any old time of year. But if there is a big crux or a trigger or a turning point in the market, you want to work backwards from that and make sure that you're building up awareness to that point. So it could be planning a series of ads that are going to hit newspapers or magazines leading up to a buying cycle. It could be planning a series of television commercials or radio commercials that are going to drop or hit the market with enough lead time so that those consumers or customers are hearing about them leading up to when their purchase decision is. So for an ad campaign that you hear in the marketplace for 3 or 4 months prior to that was probably creating those television commercials. 3 or 4 months prior to that was thinking, how much is it going to cost? How much content do we need? How will we produce it? How long will it take? So we can go back a good 3, 6, 9, 12 months just to put a radio ad or television commercial in market for 2 or 3 months before you, the consumer, are thinking about buying something.
Wow. Yeah. So long lead times.
Yes. Planning.
Yeah.
Planning.
Oh, that's really helpful. Thank you. And one of my observations of, great marketing teams at work is when it's a really collaborative effort with the other front-facing teams, as you've mentioned, like sales. So can you give us a sense of, that collaboration and why it's so important?
Collaboration is probably the one thing that makes marketing so interesting for me personally, because while a salesperson can do their job without really understanding the marketing process, or a compliance person can do their job without really understanding the marketing process, for a marketing person to do their job well, they need to understand the sales process. They need to understand a little bit about the compliance process. So I have always viewed marketing really as a hub with spokes off into all the different departments of an organization, legal and compliance, sales, client service. We really need to have touch points with all of them to understand how they're operating so that we can incorporate their inputs and their processes into our planning process.
Yeah.
So I think for somebody to be a good marketer, what they need to be first and foremost is a good communicator. And a good communicator is not somebody who just talks or transmits, but also somebody who listens or receives. So marketing really at the core is understanding all your constituents and stakeholders tangentially, how they operate, so you can incorporate their needs and their processes into how marketing operates. And I can't say that's true of every department and organization. So I think that's the fun of marketing.
Yeah.
That's the challenge of marketing. But that's the beauty of a well-oiled marketing machine, is that a well-oiled marketing machine really will feel like it is the heartbeat or the engine of the organization, that if it's moving along full speed ahead, that's because we really have a good sense of what's going on around us, and our being connected to other departments will help other departments feel better connected with other parts of the organization too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great. Thank you very much. Okay, so I guess zooming out from a no average week, what are the things that might happen less frequently throughout the year that, you know, maybe the really exciting things or the challenging responsibilities?
Well, so funny enough, the headlines of what we do, creating ads or placing ads, those are actually things that we do less frequently. So we might do a television commercial or a big ad campaign, creating an idea every 18 to 24 months. Yet that seems like it's a big part of what we do.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, we do it very seldomly, and we get tired of it. And that's one of the things we say in marketing. We get bored of our own advertising, our own messaging, long before the consumer does. So by the time something that we have spent a lot of time planning and thinking about, by the time we start talking about it or sharing it with the consumers through ads or through television commercials, we're already tired of it. And sometimes we think internally, we should get the next big thing. Well, no, we need to let those messages stew, percolate, germinate, whatever word you want to use. We need to let those words and messages live with the consumer for a long time, well beyond what we think the shelf life is internally, because we actually don't do it that often. And so we're ready for the next big thing. So ironically, we don't do a lot of new ads. We don't do a lot of new campaigns. And that's something that it takes a long lead time, a lot of planning. So we don't do as much of it as probably we're capable of or would like to.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So, Laura, tell us what you love most about running a marketing team.
For me, Joe, it's all about the people and the variety that you're exposed to. So as I mentioned at the outset, to run a marketing team, you need writers, you need event managers, you need digital marketers, you need social media specialists, you need channel marketers, you need PR people. The different types of personalities that go after these jobs. It's phenomenal. It's fascinating. So the person that loves dealing with the media is not the same kind of personality that loves pouring into web stats. So dealing with the different personality types that then lend themselves to be good at different types of jobs, understanding that mix and those drivers, if you will, what motivates the individual, that's the most fun, because it is such a broad-ranging scope of talents and interests. And it's not to say that other jobs or other functions don't have diverse personalities. That's not what I'm saying at all. But take, for example, managing a sales force. I think it's fair to say that if you have a sales force of 100 people, a lot of those 100 people will share the same drivers or the same motivators in terms of they might like the feeling of a close. They might love the chase of a good sales process. In other words, I think there's going to be a lot of homogeneity there. Because there's so many different functions in a marketing team, there's a lot less homogeneity. There's a lot more diversity. So for me, it's about bringing in the right personalities to fill the right roles, coming together as a team so that they all gel because they are so different. It's not just hoping it all works. It's really planning and looking for those complementary fits. Like if we're missing this skill set here, how do I make sure that I hire that skill set in with the next person on that digital marketing team? And then understanding how they're motivated so that we're all striving for the same objective, even though our personal motivations might be slightly different. That for me is the true fun of the job.
Yeah. So the variety of the work, but also the people doing the work.
Yes. So don't get me wrong. Good quality content, a quality ad. I mean, I love hearing when people tell me like, you know what? I loved your television commercial. I can remember it. They don't have to love the content, but as long as they remember it, I'm doing a good job.
Yeah.
That sure is very, very rewarding. But knowing that the people who did the behind the scenes work are loving their job, getting along, and are motivated to do it over and over again, that's far more rewarding for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, you know, for great leaders, it's important that, you know, that is something that, you know, they love about their roles, because, you know, being a leader is hard. And so you have to really want to do it and want to, you know, and really value and want to empower your teams and so on. And so actually at this juncture, it might be really lovely, Laura, if you could just kind of just give us a sense in your opinion of what makes a great leader.
You just hit the nail on the head. You said a great leader needs to empower their team. So anybody who's gotten to my level has probably done a lot of the different marketing jobs, and some of them we like more than others. So I personally love channel marketing. I love B2B channel marketing because I could get really in there close with the sales force and really get to know their clients well. And I really felt like they needed my contribution to help them be better salespeople. Mm-hmm. But the more senior I got, the less sense it made for me to be doing that role. I needed to have people underneath me that could do that on a broader scale. There's only one of me. Yeah. I need 5, 6, 7 channel managers sometimes. And I need to empower them and trust them to do the job that I love doing myself. So obviously my tendency is to want to get in there, but no, I've got to let them do it. I got to let them shine. I've got to let them make mistakes. I've got to let them feel the same successes that I enjoyed. So I think a really good leader will empower their people to do all they can, run as fast as they can, even if we might want to be involved, even if we might want to prevent what we see a potential mistake being made, even if we know we've got the experience so we could do it faster. No, we've got to take a step back, because as one person, we'll never be able to do it all. But as a good leader, if you've got the right people in place, absolutely you can do it all.
Yeah.
And that's the good part about being a leader, is trying to find that balance between what is it about the function or the work that you actually loved doing yourself, and how to get the right people in place so that you can take a step back, empower them to do it even better than you can do it, so that collectively you are just working on all cylinders.
Oh, that's really great. Thanks, Laura. So tell us about the challenges of running a marketing team.
This is simple because this is a challenge every marketer faces. Mm-hmm. I know, because I've had this conversation. I just had this conversation last week. I was at a networking event and somebody said to me, "Don't you hate it when..." So for more technical marketers or B2B marketers, what I mean by B2B marketers is business to business, where it's not necessarily consumer marketing. And just for those of you listening, again, the distinction being somebody selling you Nike tennis shoes versus the company selling Nike the materials they need to make those shoes. Business to business marketing versus business to consumer is very different. Yeah. But the one challenge I think all business to business marketers face is that because all of us are consumers. We might not be consumers of whatever product or service that my company happens to be selling, but we're all consumers in some way. You know, we go grocery shopping. We go Christmas shopping. We go clothes shopping. We're all consuming. By virtue of the fact that we're all consumers, and by virtue of the fact that we're all exposed to different types of media, television commercials if we watch television, radio commercials if we listen to radio, print ads if we read magazines or newspapers, we're all exposed to marketing some way or another. Therefore, a lot of people have preconceived notions about how marketing works, or as I said at the outset, the simplicity of marketing, they believe might just be creating an ad because that's what they're exposed to. So I think my pet peeve in the marketing arena is I don't have time to educate everybody on the complexities of what needs to happen in order to fill that marketing funnel. And sometimes it's a little frustrating because people actually will say, well, don't you just make a nice television commercial and aren't you done with it? I could do that in a month. It's not that simple. But because everybody's exposed to the end product, everybody has an opinion, whereas a lot of people don't have opinions about how lawyers do their job because they know that they don't have much knowledge about it. A lot of people don't have any opinion around how an IT department does their job. In fact, they want as far away from it as possible because they don't know about it. A lot of people have opinions about marketing because it touches them, even though they honestly, if I may say so, don't know that much about it.
Yeah.
That's my one gripe. And one gripe for a career, that's not bad.
That's not bad at all.
I'm entitled to that one pet peeve. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually interviewed a social media marketing consultant the other day, and she kind of talked about the same challenge in that, you know, because the majority of us are consumers of social media, you know, the perception is that it's easy, but of course, you know, building a strategy and managing a strategy for a business is very different to, you know, managing your own personal brand on Instagram or whatever.
So different. And I'll give you a perfect example. And this is such a tiny little anecdote, but it just speaks volumes. In one role, I was actually presenting to the executive committee about our brand positioning and this marketing plan that I had in place. And it was a business-to-business offer. And I had the full support of the executive committee, but there was a new leader on the team, and he was the head of the whole legal team. He was what we call the general counsel, or leader or head of the general counsel. Lovely, lovely guy, super smart. And he confessed. He said, "Look, I don't buy into it. I don't buy into television commercials. You know, I don't buy something because I see an ad. I buy something because I know it's a quality product." And I'm thinking to myself, oh, you think you don't buy it because you see an ad, but what gave you the impression it was a quality product? You know, there's all kinds of subliminal messages that we're flooded with in the marketplace. So we are, to some degree, susceptible to marketing. And he said, by the way, our product is simple. You just need to tell people that we are big and global and good at what we do. So I let him finish. And then I didn't want to be rude. I didn't want to be contrary. I didn't want to be overtly contradictory. But I had to figure out a way to say, look, all of our competitors are big. All of our competitors are global. All of our competitors say they're good at what they do. How on earth is that going to make us stand out? How on earth is that going to make people want to consider us and showing preference for us in a way that's different than considering another product or another company? But again, he just thought it was super big, good at what we do, and global. That's not a good enough reason. So I really kind of just had to bite my tongue. You know, thank you for your input, but I have to deliver a lot more than just saying that we're big, global, and good at what we do.
Oh, thanks for sharing that example.
That will forever stay with me. And I love working with this guy. And he's a genius in his own field.
Yeah.
But also, I couldn't say to him, well, how about you do your law work like this? Simple. You know, I would never in a million years think to do that. But for some reason, marketing, everybody feels like they can have their 2 cents.
Yeah. Very similar in HR. So when you look
we
back
all work with people, right? So we all know how to manage people. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
So when you look back at the, you know, the teams you've led, or the, you know, the things that you've done, what's the thing, or what's the work that you're most proud of?
So again, I suppose that the traditional would answer might be, such and such television commercial, or boosting such and such product to the top of its category, or taking awareness from nobody's ever heard of me to being a household name type product. I definitely have some success stories like that under my belt, and I'm very, very proud of that. But for me, the things at work that I'm most proud of are when people that I've hired or members of my team that I've known for years leave me, or get promoted, or go on to leave the company and do something else. In other words, they find something else that they want to do and that they are uniquely qualified to do, so they get that dream job or that dream challenge. For me, that's the most rewarding, because it means that the time spent with me has been developing them so that they can go on to something that's even more meaningful to them as an individual. I hate to lose good people. And I'm very lucky. I haven't lost very many good people, because I like to think that I can try and create challenge for those people that are seeking it. But you can't always do that. And sometimes, even though I might feel I can, the organization at large may not be able to keep pace with the development of that young individual. But I love seeing somebody come to me and say, I hate to tell you, but I'm resigning because, and it's because they found their dream job, or because something else that has really motivated or driven them has lured them away. And that is actually a great feeling.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody leaves me because they are underqualified to do their next job. So in other words, it's because something they've done while being part of my team has set them up for greater success in their life. And I like that.
Yeah. It's almost like, you're sending them off into the world. You've helped develop and that little bird, and then they're flying off to their next challenge.
Yeah, it makes me feel very good. And ideally, I'd like to be able to offer that next challenge in my team or within my organization. But if not, I like to know that they're finding whatever it is that they're looking for, and that working in my team or working with my team members has somehow contributed to that development.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thank you. All right, Laura, I'd like to go all the way back to the beginning as we move on to your journey. And I'd love to know, when you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
It sounds so corny. I wanted to be a pediatrician. Of all things, I wanted to be a doctor who took care of children.
Yeah.
And the reason being, my dad was a doctor, and I just idolized my father. We're very, very close.
Yeah.
And I love kids. And I have infinite patience for kids. And I thought, what better thing to do? I could be just like my dad, and I could focus on children. So I remember as young as being able to speak, saying, I want to grow up and be a pediatrician. Yeah. That all came to an end, though, when I took my first trip overseas. I'm, as I said, from California, but my heritage is Italian. And we went to Italy, and I liked languages, and I liked speaking Italian, and I just loved the travel. And I remember coming home from that trip and saying to my mom and dad, I don't want to be a doctor anymore. I want to be in international business. And I had no idea what international business meant, but I just knew that I wanted a job where I would be able to go out and travel and meet new people, and not a job where I went to the same office every day, which is what my dad did in his career. And for me, it was much more about seeking a job that gave me variety and exposure to different places and people. And that was such a driver for me at that young age. And so I later went on to understand through conversations like this, Joe, I didn't know what international business was. So I had to kind of find my way around to understand, what did international business entail? Yeah.
And so where were you on your education journey when you realized that this was the path for you?
I was probably going into what I would say, so I was only 8 then, but then I started to hone in what we call in the United States junior high, which is when you're about 11, 12, 13, and understanding then that I needed to start developing some skills. And the most readily available or adoptable skills was language ability. So I started learning multiple languages, knowing that if I were to do international business, it would help, I thought, if I could speak more languages. And that's something that came to me. So things that helped me focus on understanding different cultures and different people was my starting point.
Yeah. So what did you study at, I guess, college level? And I might need you to share the differences, the nuances, but between US versus UK education system.
I think it's very relevant, very relevant. Well, in high school, we don't have that many choices. So I had to follow the usual, history, science learning. Although math and science was always very important to me, because I do feel that going to business is actually a technical skill, not just a people and a communication skill.
Yeah.
So math, for example, was an area not only that I excelled in, but I kept seeking to do the higher levels. And I really want to impress upon people who are thinking about a career in marketing. There is very much a financial planning and numbers, numeric, data analytics side to the job if you want to do it at a senior level. Yeah. So that was a big part for me. But then when I actually had a choice to make, and that was going at the university level, for me, it was a technical ability, the languages, but then it was more the softer skills. And I studied Chinese studies and international relations.
Yeah.
Chinese studies to help give me a better understanding of a different geographic mindset and cultural mindset, and international relations to help me understand the different macroeconomics of how different economies work. Because I figured if I want to do international business, that would be a good backdrop in which to specialize. And then I went on to get a business degree, which actually helped me with some of the functional areas like finance and accounting and marketing, the actual disciplines of business I later did in graduate school.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thank you. So what happened after your business studies degree?
So interestingly enough, Joe, even then, after I'd done my business studies, it was still ambiguous to me what types of jobs you could do in international business. And I owe a lot of that uncertainty, or I guess lack of awareness, due to the fact that, as I mentioned before, my dad was a doctor, my mom was a nurse. I grew up in a small town where there was no industry, there was no companies. It was very tourism oriented. So I didn't really know that much about international business. And funny enough, even if I talked to my parents, they always defaulted to banking, because they knew I was good at math. I knew I spoke languages. So they said, oh, you should go into international banking, which is funny. And I remember looking into banking then, seriously taking a look when I was in business school at some of the big international banks that came on campus. And I didn't know what jobs you do in banking. And then as I dove deep into it, I thought, well, actually being a banker is not too different than being a salesperson. You're basically selling money to people, selling loans. And I thought, well, actually, I don't want to do that. So I felt, honestly, I'll say I felt a little bit lost.
Yeah.
Coming out, or going into business school, not quite sure what I wanted yet. And thinking it would all be so crystal clear when I would start taking these classes.
Yeah.
So because I was a little ambiguous, I was very lucky. And then I got recruited into a company that did a management rotation program. And I actually looked for companies that offered a management rotation program. Or looked for a company that offers some kind of rotational culture. And that was hugely important to me because it gave me exposure to different departments. So then I could see what is the practical application of my business education. What is the practical meaning of international business within different industries? And it was only from there that I was able to start honing in on an industry and a skill set. Because like I said, this type of podcast didn't exist, 40 years ago when I was budding, going off to uni, thinking, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? So I kind of felt my way around in the dark for a while because I didn't have the family infrastructure, certainly no family friends that my mom and dad could tap into to help kind of shine a light on it for me. So it was through trial and error.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you were on that rotation program, did it become obvious quite quickly which, I guess, departments you were drawn to?
It did start, because when you start in the workplace, and this is why I also think for young people, even if you don't know what you want to do, just start working.
Yeah.
Because you get exposure to different people doing different things, and you might make friends with somebody in a different department, which then gives you a bird's eye view of what happens there, even though you might never work in that department or that company. So yes, I started to get a much better understanding. I started in corporate strategy, but then I moved to the global brand team, and then I moved to actual marketing team. So when I was in corporate strategy, I got exposure to the planning team, and so when I was in the branding team, I got exposure to the financial planning team because there was a lot of money being spent on it. So every step I took created different opportunities to take many more steps in many different directions. Yeah. And that's why I just say, just get out there. If you don't know, don't let inertia hold you back. Just get out there, because questions will start to be answered. It will create more questions, but then you will develop a resourcefulness that will help you answer those questions more quickly and more effectively. So it took me a while, and I did experiment. I was a financial analyst, loved the work, hated the job because I could do the job day in, day out without talking to anybody else if I didn't want to. That's not me. That's not my personality. Yeah. But it was a great stepping stone for me to understand how financial analysts work and have that financial analysis skill set for when I became a senior marketing person, understanding the pressures that the financial reporting people on my team or my company were under. Yeah. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is wasted. That's the beauty of working. Nothing is wasted.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. Nothing is wasted. And even if you try something and realize it's not for you, at least now you know, so you can try the next thing. And I think sometimes when you're in organizations, even if you're not the one trying the thing yourself, you can kind of, look to other people in the organization, get a sense of what they're doing, talk to them, find out if that might be something you might like to try next. So I think you're right. Sometimes I think that people can almost be frozen into doing nothing because they're almost scared of making the first move and it being the wrong move, but actually just move forward and it will figure itself out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I really can't recommend enough. Just take that step, even though it might be uncertain, it might not feel like it's the exact right step, but take a step forward. And also for young people, there are not that many mistakes you can make, you know? So be willing to take a risk, be willing to dive into the uncertain.
Yeah. Yeah. So once you'd completed that rotation program and you'd figured out a little bit more about where your passions might lie and so on, what happened next?
Interesting. It wasn't meant to be my career there at Texaco, and that was for more geographic and family reasons. But what I found, so I'll take another example, is I did take a role where all of my experiences, corporate strategy, marketing, having been a financial analyst, came to bear in a role that I was offered in an organization. And again, this is, I think, very serendipitous. I was offered a job to be a project manager in an asset management firm. And that's how I got started out in asset management. It was a multinational company. And the person that brought me said, sky's the limit. We're all over the world. I was brought in to do project management work, which is a blend of, it was understanding the profitability, whether or not this certain division was profitable. So the corporate strategy work I had done was very helpful because I understand the role that this division played within the organization. The financial analyst work I'd done had come in very handy because I was trying to determine if this organization was profitable. And then the marketing work I had done was very valuable because each division was marketed somehow differently. So our ability to succeed in the marketplace, I had to analyze all this to determine what was the best path forward and make a recommendation to senior management. What would have been the best path forward? And they were looking at it from an economic lens. What would have been the most profitable path forward? All those things that I had done prior prepared me for this, which was a very ambiguous project. And it helped me map out the different steps I needed to take to come up with a recommendation. And interestingly enough, the recommendation was the exact opposite of what it looked like on the surface.
Yeah.
In other words, we had one product that was easy enough product to build, but it was very, very expensive to market, but we could charge a lot for it. I mean, we were charging top of market. And it did cost a bit to service, though. And this was the part that was unbeknownst to a lot of people. Whereas there was another product that we sold where we didn't charge hardly anything for. But it didn't cost a lot to market, and it didn't cost anything to service. So the expensive product was the one that the company thought that they should be selling more of. But when we found out how much it cost to service and maintain that product, we were losing money. And so the recommendation was sell a cheap product, because from a financial perspective, this is very profitable for us. Very profitable. So with that recommendation, the company came to me and said, would you help us market that product? Would you help us commercialize that product? So in other words, every step led to another step, led to another step. And then once I started marketing that product, my boss said, would you actually help us launch other products? Because you know what goes into the economics and the marketing. So what I'm trying to say is I did not have a very clear idea, Joe, of what I wanted to do. I did not have a clear idea of what all the different departments and roles were. I did know what I was competent in doing. And I did know that I was a good learner and resourceful, and I could apply all these things from different, and I used that to do the job ahead of me as well as I could. And every door that I opened helped open other doors through just getting more experience or meeting more people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's actually a really good lesson, isn't it? You know, we're always building on our knowledge and experience and our learnings. And, you know, unless we are right at the beginning, we're never starting from scratch. You know, we're starting from a
even
place
though it feels
of
like
experience.
at the time.
Yeah.
It feels like you might be starting from scratch, but you're not.
Yeah, always building. And it might not be always up. It might be in a different direction or over here, but we're always building. Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
So I would just say be receptive, play to your strengths, but don't be afraid to do something that doesn't feel like it's exactly what you want, because it could lead to a better understanding of what you want or what you don't want. So that next step, you're going to get even closer.
Yeah. Thank you. So now you're building and marketing new products at this organization. What happens next?
So interestingly, and again, this is where I think back on an individual might grow or change at a pace that's different than the organization they're part of. So I desperately wanted to grow internationally. I wanted to do what I was doing on a domestic national scale on an international scale. And this is where, and this is probably why I value good leadership, my manager at the time said, look, our division is never going to be part of the international machine. I wish I knew that before I joined. But no, actually, it's fine that I didn't know that before I joined, because I never would have gotten this knowledge. And I probably, if I had known that this division would never been international, I would have never taken that job. And I would have been like swimming in this sea of uncertainty, thinking I needed to hold out for what looked perfect on paper, when there was so many good things I could have learned along the way. So I'm glad that this came about. But my boss said, you know, we're never going to be part of the international division. That's not the master plan for this. So if you want to go international, you're probably going to have to go to another company. Thankfully, though, this company, it's a fantastic corporation, a great reputation. I learned so much while I was there. And again, I knew marketing, I knew product development, I knew financial planning, I knew strategic positioning, that when the next job came my way, which thankfully was an international product marketing job, and I had Latin America, Asia, and Europe, I was able to apply all those skills. And because they weren't all just marketing skills, but they were just general management skills, I was far better equipped to be a good marketing partner to the sales organization in this new organization than the average marketer that they'd encountered, who had only ever experienced marketing. So that's why I say, take opportunities no matter where they come from, because the sum of the parts is going to be so much more valuable for you in the long run. Yeah.
Oh. And so I guess moving from, a non-international role into an international role, what are the challenges that you faced as part of that transition?
So I think some of the challenges are twofold. One can be your constituents' lack of confidence in you and your knowledge. And two, your lack of confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
What don't you know that you feel you should know? And those are two very different problems to tackle. So one, getting the confidence yourself that you know enough to ask the right question is one thing. And then learning enough and showing that you are competent enough so that your colleagues or stakeholders have enough confidence in you is a different skill set.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can say is most people, or many people, I should say, when they don't know something or don't have the confidence that they don't know enough or should know more than they believe they do, the natural instinct is to recoil and try to find all the answers on your own.
Yeah.
Or the natural instinct is to not ask questions because you're afraid you're asking a stupid question or a question that you should already know the answer to. That's, I think, human nature.
Mm-hmm.
That is the exact wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
Asking questions, asking stupid questions, asking questions that you feel that maybe you should know the answer to is never going to put you in bad standing. Because if your constituents see your thirst for knowledge, your willingness to show vulnerability, your willingness to ask questions that maybe you should know the answer to so that you are getting smarter and better, will put you in a position of credibility.
Yeah.
That will do far more for you in the long run than being too shy to ask questions, letting people think you know the answer, and then finding out the hard way that you don't.
Mm-hmm.
You finding out the hard way that you don't. That will undermine your credibility and undermine people's trust in you. So be willing to put yourself out there, expose yourself maybe, or be vulnerable that you don't know or feel that you should, but are willing to expose that you don't in order to get that knowledge base. Anybody dealing with another market, either a new product or a new geography, is always going to be in this position.
Yeah.
You can't possibly come into every job knowing everything. So be willing to put yourself out there at the outset with a curiosity and an inquisitiveness that might be uncomfortable, but will pay you back in spades in the long run when you start developing that confidence and that knowledge. And other people have the confidence in you that you have done the right things, asked the right questions, and they see your confidence and knowledge building and growing also.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. Thanks for sharing that. I think it's so important. And I've been in environments where it can feel scary to ask questions because you don't want to look stupid. Mm-hmm. But then equally, I've been in environments where, the messaging loud and clear is, no question is too stupid here. And, I know where I thrived, which environment I thrived in.
Exactly.
So I think that,
Exactly. And just think of yourself. I never look upon somebody and be like, oh my God, that was the dumbest question I've ever heard. And if it is borderline, and if I'm thinking that person really should know this, I'm not looking to cut that person off at the knees.
Yeah.
What I would do is take that person afterward and say, hey, do you want to spend a few minutes with me? And I can kind of maybe get you up to speed so you're a little bit more comfortable with the subject matter.
Yeah.
Any good organization is going to breed that kind of culture where we look to help people that we feel might be swimming in the deep end, right? So it's absolutely okay. And by the way, if you're not in that kind of culture, get the heck out.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure we've all been in a room. I'm sure the audience have all been in a room where someone's put the hand up to ask the question and they've thought, thank goodness they asked it. Have the courage to ask the question.
So true. That's a really good point, Joe. So many times there are a lot of people in the room thinking, I don't know what that acronym stands for, or what did he mean by that? But they're too embarrassed or afraid to ask. And then there's one courageous person who says, wait a second, I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you just back up to that part? Please explain. And you see people around the room paying attention.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it takes a little courage. It takes a little courage, but it pays off.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with this international move, was there a location move as well, or were you still based in the US?
So for years I worked in the New York office, and I got to know the international businesses. But what actually created that catapult, if you will, or that jumping off point where my company wanted me to be overseas was I got to know the international businesses. I got to know the international team so well by asking a lot of questions, getting to know their business as well as they did, so that I knew the business in France better than anybody in the organization other than the person in France.
Yeah.
I knew the sales organization in Italy better than everybody else in the organization other than the people in Italy. So that when it came time where they needed to grow the infrastructure to help their businesses, I wanted to be their first choice. So what was I doing by asking those questions? I was in essence marketing myself, creating awareness. Hey guys, I'm out here. I'm in the New York office. I can be a resource for you. Do what? Consider me when you need help with somebody. Consider me. So know what I'm capable of doing, so that when you need something that I can help you with, I'm the person you come to. Preference. I'm the person you've chosen to come to me. So in a way, to get that international job, I had to build my brand, awareness of my product or service in a way that made me marketable as somebody who could do this job internationally. So to create awareness and consideration and preference for what I could offer as an individual in that job to be located overseas. So very much a part of the personal marketing agenda was getting myself seen and known to those people who can make those decisions, saying, I want Laura to come over here and do the job.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that's great.
That's a large part of the job internally when you're working, is how do you brand yourself to your colleagues? How do you make your capabilities and preferences known to other people so that you're being considered for those jobs? Nobody's a mind reader.
Yeah.
You can't expect your boss to know what you want. So make that part of your personal brand.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So when I think it was London that you came to for that international job. So what was that job? I
came into a role that did not exist prior. So we gave it a title, Chief Operating Officer, because it was actually making the business operate more efficiently. So it was actually a very accurate job title. But the interesting thing is they never had that job title in the organization. So they said, no, we don't think that, and the New York operation said, we don't think so. We have a COO over here. But the head of the European business in London said, yeah, you got it over here, but I don't have that over here. And I want her to manage all the operations over here, just like you have that there. And operations included product development, product marketing, product management, client service. So it was a very all-encompassing role that all the things I had done in my previous career contributed to, because it was very much finding my way around in the dark. That role hadn't existed. So I couldn't model it after the person there before me because there was nobody there before me.
Yeah.
And that's also what I mean about being willing to ask questions, because part of what I had to find out when I got there was, what was the greatest need? If you said operations, that's not one thing. So I was able to go around salesperson to salesperson and say, well, what do you need from me? And some people, it was more product. And some people, it was, I have the right product, but I need you to market it. Some people, it was, I have the product, I have the marketing, but I just don't have the back office operations piece that helps the product get into market. So it was very much a diagnostic role, and being willing to ask questions, being willing to ask questions that maybe they thought I should know the answer to. Like, isn't it obvious to you what I need? No.
Yeah.
So that was a big part of my transition to an international role. And I will say, first and foremost, when you do move markets or move departments or move companies, the one piece of advice I will offer, don't take anything for granted. Try not to carry any assumptions or preconceived notions with you. Try as much as you can, and it's hard to do, to start from a clean slate, and even be willing to ask questions you think you know the answers to.
Yeah, that's good advice. Wow. All right. And I think that's another interesting point there as well around kind of, job titles and, meanings of one, term in one organization versus the other. And, you do really have to kind of, really understand what that means for that organization.
You're absolutely right, Joe. I have been in organizations where product marketing, some organizations call that product management, and it doesn't sit within the marketing organization. I've been in other organizations where they have a product management function, but I'm looking at it saying, that's actually, you're not managing the product, you're marketing the product. So nomenclature, naming is something that is worthwhile to understand and get under it. And that's what I said again. Don't make any assumptions. Try not to bring any preconceived notions, either in a new department, a new organization, definitely not in a new country. The best favor you can do yourself is try and start from a clean slate, build up, and then apply your knowledge as you develop your understanding of the particular setting that you're in at that point in time, so that you don't supersede or implant your experience with a previous experience, which might bring some preconceived notions that are not correct or not applicable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just on this point, and it's especially applicable when looking after, having partners in multiple regions, there are so many cultural nuances. And I always remember an old leader of mine talking about some cultural training she had when she transferred from the US to the UK. And there are a whole bunch of terms that mean something completely different in either region. And so I just think it's, just clean slate, no preconceived ideas, and just ask.
And if you are working internationally, or like I said, in marketing, where you have a lot of different constituents, so this is just a rule for life, one size does not fit all. I remember very, very vividly, I worked in this operations role where I was doing product marketing and product management, and the head of the Nordics region, he liked me to be involved in everything. So he wanted me to help with the pricing. He wanted me to help with the contract. He really wanted to know that there was somebody at the main office in London partnering with him every step of the way. So interestingly, at one meeting, he said, and will Laura be involved in every step of the way? And somebody said, yeah, Laura will be involved every step of the way. That same day, somebody from the London office came to me and said, oh, I'm really sorry about that meeting earlier today. I said, what meeting? What are you sorry about? He said that part where the person in the Nordics said, is Laura going to be involved every step of the way? I said, why are you sorry? And he goes, because we all know we don't want you to be involved every step of the way, Laura. So obviously he didn't want you to be involved, and he was double checking to make sure you wouldn't be involved every step of the way. And I said, no, I think you misunderstood. He absolutely wants me to be involved every step of the way. So he was double checking to make sure I would be. And I said, and by the way, to this person in the UK, I know you don't want me to be involved every step of the way. So that's why I definitely am not involved for you. But I do that on purpose because I know you don't want it. You're here in the home office. You can go to all these people individually just by walking down the hall. He can't do that. He's not in the main office. He doesn't know half the people he needs to. So for you, I have a very different approach where I don't get involved in any of that because I know you don't want me to be involved in any of that. And he stopped and he thought to himself, he said, oh my God, I thought he was saying the exact opposite. I thought he was saying, get Laura out of my business. And he was saying the exact opposite. And I said, no. And by the way, I appreciate that you don't want me in your business that deep. And so I don't play that role for you. So I think it's really important. That's also what I said earlier about being a good communicator, being willing to talk, but also being willing to listen. Be attentive and don't assume. And one size does not fit all. From country to country, person to person.
Great advice. Thank you. So what happens after the operations role?
That's where, it's funny enough, my marketing came back into play because once I'd gotten the operations humming along, marketing is often a function that when everything else is working, the product is in place, the operations, the way by which you get the product to consumer, think about that as distribution, then marketing is often the last we call it discretionary. In other words, you're not forced to do it, but the last thing that a company often does is budget for marketing, which is a nice to have, a lot of people feel. Well, if you ask me, it's not a nice to have, it's a must have. Yeah. But because we had built the operations back up over here in Europe, they're saying, okay, now we feel like we have something to market. So marketing came back into my portfolio, if you will, at that point, because we had the product in place. We had the mechanism to get the product to the consumer in place. We had the mechanism to service the product. So now we had to market ourselves much better. And what was so good about that stage is that I had the trust of all the different pieces of the business at that point in time so that I could make really contentious, some might say expensive, radical marketing recommendations that would not have been even remotely considered 3 years prior. Yeah. But it is because they had so much more foundational work to do before they're ready to take those radical, aggressive marketing steps. But also, they would not have had the confidence in me as an individual that I understood their business well enough to make such aggressive, radical marketing steps. And that is the one thing that I recommend to everybody going into marketing. You have to take the time to understand the business model and understand the marketplace so that you are taken seriously when you want to do something aggressive or different, so that you can validate and explain your rationale in order to get the buy-in and the confidence and the support of the rest of the organization. Because if you're going to stick your neck out to spend money to do something that a lot of people don't understand or don't believe is right, you have to be able to persuade and explain and influence. And those are skills that knowledge helps with. And there's a wonderful quote that I love: knowledge flows to the one who knows. But that's not always enough to persuade people. So that was what came along after the operations, is in bringing marketing, which is kind of like the icing on the cake, the cherry on top, if you will, into the portfolio, because the company, the product, had become that mature that we now needed to be a lot more persuasive in building awareness and consideration and influence. Building preference among our audience. Hopefully I brought it all full circle back to that funnel that I talked about at the beginning.
Yeah, I love it. And so I believe then you moved from an operations role into a more of a pure head of marketing role.
Actually, I had operations and marketing. And this again brings that conversation full circle. I couldn't do it all. Like to think I'm Wonder Woman, but I'm not. But with the right people underneath me and the right teams, I was able to manage then a joint team that did product development or management, product marketing, client service, because I built up and staffed the team with the level of knowledge and experience that they needed so that I could have good oversight and partnership with the head of sales, and that team members underneath me could then carry that baton that I used to carry, being the product specialist, being the channel manager, doing the things that I had experience doing, but they were doing it expertly, and in many cases, way better than I ever did when I was back in their shoes. So it was that ability to build the appropriate team with the appropriate skill sets so that I could do lots of different functions. And that's what leadership is about. How do you empower, and how do you resource, and how do you motivate people to do things that you can't possibly all do yourself, but that needs to collectively happen in order for the organization to achieve its goals? And so I was able to graduate to that level of seniority. And what was hard for me is for people who knew me as that channel manager, or people who knew me as that product marketer, to stop seeing me that way and start seeing me as the leader that I'd become, empowering other people to do the job that I used to do. And that was a transition that they needed to make, but I also needed to make.
Yeah. And I imagine some of those qualities you talked about earlier around, the similarities, I imagine, between looking after a region to looking after international. It's again, not assuming, and also not being afraid to ask the question and having that belief in yourself.
Yeah. And being able to, I guess, if you will, take that risk of exposing what I don't know along the way. Perfectly okay. Because what leader at the top could possibly know everything?
Yeah.
It's impossible. And if I don't judge people that way, why would I feel that I was going to be judged that way?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. And so does that then take us to, senior leadership roles of marketing teams, or are there any steps in between?
Yeah, it did take. So because progressing beyond that led to either more global roles, because the roles of the operations was a regional one. So global roles. So taking a functional area, marketing, but around the world. Yeah. Or the most recent role I had, where I came back just to a particular region, but it was multiple channels and multiple countries, as opposed to just a single channel in a region. So that's another thing about marketing that I love. There's so many ways to dice and slice it in order to get the growth you want. Multiple products in a single market can be a lot more challenging than a single product in multiple markets. Single market, but multiple channels can be more challenging than single channel and multiple markets. So there's a lot of different ways: product, channel or audience type, market, meaning, what country you're in or region. There's a lot of different ways you can seek complexity and learning in marketing, where you don't necessarily have to leave the company, and it can all come your way. So just being open to that variety and understanding the nuances that those different layers of development, where they can be hidden, is very, very helpful. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. So when you look back on your career journey from, young school age to where you are now, what would you say has been the high of the journey?
So the high, so aside from kind of achieving my goals, was to try and get into international business and achieving that, where I'm living and working international, and I'm getting on planes, and I'm actually getting on planes because people need me to go someplace to meet with me, not just because I want to go on a boondoggle and get a free trip. In other words, there's a demand, and I'm satisfying that demand, because I do believe that travel for business travel's sake is actually no fun. But when there's a need and you're collaborating with somebody on the tail end of that business trip, there's a lot of reward that you get from that personal interaction. But what I have found very, very rewarding throughout the process is the influence that other people have had on me. And I like to put this not in the bucket of mentoring, but sponsorship. And what I have is it sounds hokey, but like a personal board of directors, is that people I tap into for expertise, either about my industry, my function, or about me as a person, that can offer me advice, or that kind of push me or steer me in a certain direction. And that's what I mean by a board of directors or sponsorship versus mentoring. Yeah. So I have really benefited from other people influencing my career or pushing me in a certain direction also. And that's what I mean by sponsorship. Such that, for example, I got a job once that I did not want. I was in international product marketing. Somebody asked me to move over to product development. I was not excited about it. But this was a very senior person in the organization that knew what I was capable of doing, and knew that this would lead to a better international role, doing more product marketing and product management if I took this step. And because they were willing to take this risk and pushing me in that direction, I figured, well, I value this person. I value what this person has done in this career. I'd be foolish not to take this person's advice. And it wasn't my favorite job, but it's a job where I learned the most, and it catapulted me into my dream job. So for me, the rewarding thing has been the relationship that I've had with people along the way, that I've had to trust, or that people have put trust in me And at this stage, it's developing relationships of people not underneath me, because I don't view it as a hierarchy, but people that are seeking my advice, or people that I am them trusting to try and pull up to do work with me. And it's that kind of continuum of relationships that I think are both professional, but very personal at the same time, that has been very rewarding.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. And what about the I guess the challenges of the career journey? You know, any failure you had to overcome, or any, you know, feelings of inadequacy, or, you know, or just something that happened?
Yeah, I will say there. So, for example, when I told you that at one point I got tapped on the shoulder to do this product job, well, I understood the rationale. I was also very worried, like, okay, I've gotten this far in marketing, but now if I'm walking away from marketing, is that going to be like, okay, I go forward in products, which I don't really care about, and then other people will be porting their career in marketing and I won't be. And I just kind of worried, like, am I and then when I took this operations role, am I spreading myself too thin? Am I becoming too much of a generalist? Will I find myself actually fairly senior, or I should say, moving on in years, but not moving on in seniority because I haven't specialized? I was concerned about that at one point, because somebody said to me, like, oh, you're a marketer. I was like thinking to myself, yeah, but I've been marketing for 3 years. I've been in product for all this time. And then when I moved over to operations, which is more operations and product, I was like, let me take over marketing. I was like, oh my God, I feel a little rusty. I really did worry, was I not developing enough of an expertise? And then I kind of questioned my preconceived notions. Again, preconceived notions. Why did I think that? Well, because I was looking at doctors, lawyers, accountants, people that build up seniority by doing the same thing over many, many years, and therefore they become or are considered to be experts in their field. But yet marketing isn't anything at all like that. General business management isn't anything at all like that. So I realized I was measuring myself against the wrong benchmark. But it took me a few years to figure that out. And I was feeling insecure all of this time, thinking, what should my next step be so that I actually take the right strategic step? And that's when I realized, for what I want to do, there are no wrong steps, because what I value is variety. What I value is general knowledge. What I value is being able to take on a job where you don't know everything. You are not necessarily the subject matter expertise, but you know how to become that. So why was I measuring myself or judging my success or my level of seniority against benchmarks where those things aren't valued? So that was a little bit of a crisis of confidence, if you will, that I was going through as I was becoming more of a middle manager to a senior manager, thinking, am I taking the right step to actually become that very senior leader that I want to be? Then I realized I'm measuring myself against the wrong benchmark.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of thinking about it. Yeah, it's
it helped me take a step back, and I had to rely on some of those senior people in my circle, that board of directors, to help kind of build my confidence back up too, which is no different than a company should use a board of directors to say, are we on the right path to achieve our strategic goals? And so I also realized I don't have all the answers. So as the older I got, the more I leaned into other people to help give me the assurance of the confidence I was doing the right thing.
Yeah. Thank you. For somebody who thinks, wow, that sounds like a good idea. And by the way, I do too, because I've talked about it before on the podcast in reference to you. How might someone go about building their own mini board of directors?
Well, I would say, just like we say in investing, the best time to invest is when you have money. So the best time to start building your personal board of directors is when you need help.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking that you're something you need help with, and it can be anything. Do I buy an apartment versus renting an apartment? Should I buy a new car versus buying a used car? In other words, there's going to be milestones in our life where we will benefit from getting the advice or help of others. And so I think to put into context who are those people in your life? And it's not the same thing for everything, right? There's some things I go to these people for, and there's something I would never go to that person for. But trying to put in the people in your life that you admire, that you respect, that you believe make good decisions, put them in context of you and why you admire them, why you respect them, what are the decisions that you need to make where you might need input, and be willing to bring those people into that decision.
Yeah.
To give you a perfect example, there's a woman in my life who has been my friend since I was 4 years old. And I viewed her when I was growing up as like a family member. Because when you're young and you look up to adults, there's usually some type of senior parental, oversight, adult-child relationship. But as we became adults, I began to value her for the work experience that she had had when she was a woman my age. And she would offer me advice. And then I realized she's had a fabulous 25, 30-year career. She's got a lot of advice to offer. So I began sharing with her and then saying, Ollie, what would you have done? And I found that it was such another layer to our relationship, because she wasn't just giving me advice from an adult to a child. She was giving me advice from one professional to another.
Yeah.
And it was a very valuable relationship, because she brought perspectives that other senior people in my life, when you're a young professional, let's face it, your parents are usually, not always, but usually that other group of senior people in your life that have a lot of influence on you. She was far more objective. And that's when I realized her advice was often different than the advice I was getting from the other senior people in my life, people I was related to, and it was valuable. And then I started realizing in the workplace, there's other people that like I said, I really admired. So those that I admired, I realized, why do I only think about them in the context of a work relationship? They've got a lot of experience. So one person in particular, the one who I told you tapped me on the shoulder to say, I want you to go do this product job. But he actually was seeing me, not just for what I could do at that point in time, he was seeing me in the spectrum of what I could do in my entire career, saying, this will be really helpful for you for your next job.
Yeah.
So, oh my God, he's already thinking about me in my career. Why wouldn't I tap into that individual and put him on my own personal board of directors? Go to him.
Yeah.
And as a result, he had very vested interest in my success, because he had put me forward for this job. He wanted to make sure I was very successful. It would look good for him too. So I slowly started thinking about this concept of who. And one day somebody said, oh, it's like you have a personal board of directors. And I thought, that's exactly what I have. And some people have been on it for years. Some people have rotated off. I've invited new members as I've found myself in new situations where I need a different skill set or I need a different perspective. The biggest thing is, though, be willing to ask people for advice. Be willing to share your thoughts and conundrums with people, because you will get different perspectives. And here's the best part. You don't have to take their advice just because you asked for it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
It's fun. When you start thinking about people in that perspective, it becomes very fun and becomes very rewarding for both. Some people have been on my board of directors for years without even knowing they're on it. And some people I've told, I'd like to put you on my board of directors. And I've explained to them what I mean by that. And they kind of think it's funny and they're tickled. But at the same time, I think they appreciate me being very forthright with them, to saying, I really value you and I value my relationship with you. And I value how I think you can help me. So however you want to approach it, be either clandestinely, privately, or very openly, I just think it's there are relationships that you value in life, and why not put them in the context of how they can help you?
Yeah. And most people, I'd probably say 99% of people, love to help other people. So it can be, don't think you're being a burden by asking that person. I'm sure they would love to help you if they have the time.
Jo, that is such good advice for anybody, young or old. The one thing that we are all probably conscious of is time and other people's time. And if you approach somebody asking for some form of help, and if you can do that and be respectful of their time, In other words, no, it's not fair to approach somebody today saying, I need something from you tomorrow. That's never okay. That's not being respectful of what other things might be vying for that person's time. But if you go to somebody and say, hey, could I get some time with you over the coming month? Or do you think you might have some time for me one afternoon to fill in the blanks? In other words, as long as you're respectful of people's time, nobody is going to not want to help you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. All right. So for people thinking, I like the sound of this marketing, I might like to find out more. What would you say would be helpful educations or trainings for them?
Since we talked about earlier, since marketing is very nuanced, depending on the organization, the product, the market, I really don't feel there is any one-stop shop for marketing education. It's very much an on-job learning experience. Unlike, for example, accounting, where you become qualified and you can assume once you've qualified that you could go into a certain level of an organization and be functionally prepared. Marketing is somewhat nuanced. So I would say a good starting point is, if you're interested in marketing, is to start thinking about the subject matter. Is it a consumer product, like the kind that you personally might buy? Are you interested in marketing those types of things? Or are you interested in something that's a little bit more behind the scenes, like a business to business, where it takes in a little bit more technical knowledge? But either way, I would start, the best thing you can do as a marketer is to be aware of marketing's influence on you or marketing's influence on the people around you. So again, I use that example where that person told me once, oh, they're not susceptible to marketing. I don't buy anything based on the television commercial I've seen or based on the thing. I thought, okay, that very well may be true. And by the way, it can't be true because none of us live in a media bubble. We're all exposed by walking out our front door to outside influences. But I said, okay, just to give that person the benefit of the doubt, how does that person? So how did you decide that you wanted to buy an Apple? Well, everybody knows that Apple computers are the best. Everybody in my family uses an Apple. Oh, okay. So now you're influenced by other people, but they're probably influenced. So in other words, to really try and understand what are the different levers that a marketing function can pull. Is it word of mouth marketing? Well, that means that you need other people to be talking about your product. Is it television commercials? So just try to understand, how does that motivation work in the mind of the consumer? So be it my husband, who is influenced by a certain car that he wants to buy, not because he likes the television commercials, but because of what it represented, for example, when he was growing up. So that, I would say, is the first step of marketing. You have to be willing to put yourself in the minds or the shoes of the consumer to see how the different elements or parts of the marketing mix, tactics, work to influence behavior. And once you start developing an understanding for what you appreciate or what's generating more curiosity, I think you're ready to take the next step to say, where would you like to take this level of curiosity? Where do you want that to go to help develop your understanding of marketing in the workplace?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's probably, that's helpful for people who might already be on their education journey thinking, oh my goodness, I haven't done X. So I think that's really great.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned earlier, there are so many different pathways within marketing. I think it would probably be hard to, call out, I don't know, some the key soft skills that make for somebody who might be successful in marketing. But I think that, if there were any that you felt, covered, broad soft skills that you think are important for somebody to be successful in marketing, what would you speak to there?
I would say, as I mentioned earlier, the communication skills are critical. So being able to clearly articulate not just what you want to say, but what you want to ask is very important. being able to be very receptive, being a very active listener, and being very curious. I think those are key skills of a marketer. You have to be willing to ask a lot of questions to get to the core of, what does the salesperson really need? What does the client really need? What is compliance expecting of me? So because I said we're kind of at that hub, you do need to understand a little bit more about what the spokes lead to, whereas the spokes don't need to understand so much about the hub. So the communication that lets you be both a good transmitter as well as a good receiver.
Yeah.
Good question asker. And by the way, somebody might say, well, that's pretty obvious. Not really. These aren't skills that everybody is born with. I'll give you an example. One of my weaknesses. I ask tons of questions, but sometimes my question asking makes people feel insecure or like I'm doubting them or that I don't have trust or that they're being interrogated. So it's not sufficient just to ask the questions. You have to also think, how are those questions landing on the receipt end? And so, in other words, I don't think, as I said at the beginning, don't take anything for granted. There are skills, that are involved in doing something as simple as asking a question. So be a little bit deliberate in how you communicate. And I think that's essential to be a good marketer. The other thing I think is essential as a marketer is being persuasive by being able to tell the story in the context that's important to the audience. And again, that is not just in how you sell the product, but how you sell ideas to people.
Yeah.
Just like a consumer might be receptive to information about that running shoe I was talking about at the beginning example, a CEO needs to be receptive to the idea of spending more money. So it's not just marketing products, it's marketing ideas, marketing concepts, marketing solutions.
Yeah.
We're always marketing. A lot of us just don't think about it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. All right. What does the future hold for marketing, Laura? I mean, I'm thinking it's bright.
I am surprised at myself at how bright I think the future looks for marketing. No pun intended, since I'm sitting as a ray of sunshine comes in through my window. What's fascinating is that when markets develop, so when I say that, it can be not just the market in England, but a market for a certain product or service. As markets develop, traditionally what happens is that means that they're getting more competitive. Either there's more in the marketplace or there's more price competition, which means consumers, it's better for a consumer because that means the consumer either has more choices or more choices at different price points. Theoretically, that's what happens as markets mature, typically. That also means the job of the marketer is more difficult because it's more difficult to stand out in a crowded environment. It's more difficult to differentiate yourself in a crowded environment where there's a lot of competitors, old or new. And so I think the challenges of marketing are becoming better understood by the marketplace in general, by a lot of companies in general, and the need to be differentiated, not just through product dominance, but through marketing, is something that has, I think, changed materially over the past 10 years. And it's changing even more, I think, as the years go on, because it is difficult to compete. It's difficult to succeed in the marketplace. And if you can get an edge through the hearts and minds of the consumer based on how you market to that individual, then you've got an edge that can be pretty significant and enduring, even when your product might falter or fall behind the competition from time to time. And these are things that now we have years of studies that have proven this to be true. Whereas we felt instinctively as marketers that this might be true 10, 15, 20 years ago, now we have a lot of research in the industry that shows how some of these less measurable components of the marketing mix are actually having measurable effects on how well a company does its product or service, how well it sells, how well it competes. So I think marketing is coming into its own. as a very well respected function within an organization, more so than it has historically, when it was associated with products, consumer goods, clothing, toys, fashion. It's not limited to just things that we can buy and hold in our hands.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm guessing, I'm guessing the social media part of marketing is growing on another level too. Something I think was probably accelerated during the pandemic, and that feels like almost like a function in itself.
Oh, absolutely, and it's closed off some channels that used to be open to marketing. Some tactics, I should say, of the marketing mix are no longer valuable or useful to some organizations or products, and it's introduced new ones. So, and that's what I alluded to earlier when I talked about the flexibility or the fluidity. So you might have a roadmap, but you might find that you are not actually following the same course that you thought you were going to be taking a year ago, because different things have happened in the marketplace. New tactics have been introduced. So, and that's the beauty of, so if you are the kind of person who likes being open to new things, who likes dealing with ambiguity, who is not turned off by uncertainty or the introduction of things that you were not expecting, if those things don't daunt you, you'll do just fine.
Yeah.
If you don't welcome that, don't go into marketing, because you will find that it's very challenging. You belong in a career where things are far more predictable. And that's not the marketing space.
Yeah. We've all heard of the Blockbuster story.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So, Laura, as we move towards wrapping up, what do you know now that you wish you'd known when you were just starting out on your career journey?
I talked about it earlier. Like, don't be afraid just to get out there and work. When I was first starting, I was worried that I would make the wrong step or do the wrong thing, that I would then be wasting time. And I remember once I was looking for a job, and again, somebody very senior was saying, there are a few jobs coming my way, but they didn't feel quite right. And I was just like, and I just felt so discouraged that exactly my mental picture of the perfect job hadn't come my way. And I remember just thinking, I'm making a mistake, or I'm not as far down the path as I want to be. And again, it was this person I was alluding to, and saying, like, there are no mistakes. You're so young. And I see young people today even do this, where they're like in their 20s and they're like, I don't want to be in this job for too long because it's not my dream job. And I feel like I really need to accelerate the step in a certain direction. I'm thinking, you're 24, you've got time. And by the way, you're learning every step of the way. So I kind of wish that I had that mindset when I was first starting out in my 20s, because I feel like I actually lost some time through waiting for that perfect thing, or thinking, I'm not going to leave it because unless it's just perfect, I'm not going to pursue it. And I was foolish, because there was so much learning to be had along the way. And then finally I had to give in. But it took me, in one case, I was unemployed for a period of about 6 months. And I remember all these jobs came my way. And this person said to me, "What are you waiting for?" And I said, "Well, and they're like, "Oh, so you're waiting for the perfect thing." And by the way, I remember her saying to me, "It's not like you have to live with this person or live with this for the rest of your life. 2 or 3 years, and then you can move on."
Yeah.
And she put it to me in that context, because I was thinking about it like marriage. You want to be enduring, thinking, I'm just going to have one job for the rest of my life. What was I thinking? I was like 24, 25 years old.
Yeah.
And when I hear young people say to me like, this doesn't tick all the boxes, and or I'm worried if I do this, then it'll, I won't be able to do that in 5 years from now, and I feel like saying, there are no wrong answers at this stage. You're so young. Everything that you do is a learning experience. Yeah. Anything you do, you will be able to take with you in the context of what you do next, either telling you do like something a lot, or you really don't like something, so avoid it. But be moving forward, be working, be progressing. Take it all in. You're a sponge. There are no wrong steps that you can be taking as a young professional. And when I say this, I'm really talking about definitely in your 20s, but well into your 30s too. I find that people are a little bit too prescriptive in their ideas, and hard on themselves in terms of the decisions they let themselves take. Go easy on yourself. It's all good when you're a young professional starting out.
Yeah, great advice. There are no wrong moves, and nothing is forever.
Nothing is forever. Exactly. We are not talking about raising children. We're not talking about saying yes to a marriage proposal, where you are making commitments to people's lives. We're talking about a job where, by the way, the average job now, there's some television commercial that has the statistic, is something like 4 or 5 years. That's average, which means that some people are in jobs for 7 or 8 years. Some people are in the jobs for 2 or 3. And the younger you are, you're absolutely expected to move on at a different pace, because the more menial or less experience the job needs, the less time you would expect to master that job. So the faster you would expect to move on. So it's absolutely okay as a young professional to expect to graduate to a next role or a next decision in your career with only a few years under your belt. Don't expect to go straight to the top that quickly.
Yeah.
But don't expect to be languishing if you're worried about something too long. Other opportunities will present themselves as a result of this next step, which might be right in front of you.
Yeah. Thank you. Laura, I love a quote, and I'm wondering if you have any favourite quotes or expressions that you'd like to share.
I too love a quote, and I threw one in earlier. Knowledge flows to the one who knows, but that one doesn't always hold true the more senior you get. But there's one that my dad always said to me, and I love, because I think it's really pertinent to the conversation we've been having, which is not to be afraid to ask. Don't assume people can read your mind. Put yourself out there, share what your wants and needs are so you can get the help that you need. But my dad always said, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. I love that.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask, whatever it is. And it's not just about getting things, I want, therefore I should ask for it. But don't be afraid to ask. Because if you don't ask, the answer is always no. Or the flip side, you will always be left wondering. So be willing to put yourself out there and ask the tough questions. And yes, by the way, that also applies for money or pay raise. Be willing to ask, because if you don't ask for it, you're definitely not going to get it. So if you don't ask, the answer is always no. I like that quote.
Love that. I love that too. Yeah. Thank you. Laura, this has been amazing.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed, hearing about your experiences and learning from your wisdom. And I'm confident the audience are going to find this really valuable too. So thank you so much.
Oh, well, Jo, you've done me quite a compliment by saying it's wisdom. It's definitely experience. And if it's perceived to be wisdom, I'm very happy for that. But I really have enjoyed talking about something that I'm very passionate about, which is how most of us spend the majority of our time, which is work. So I want it to be something that I enjoy, and I really wish that for all your listeners too.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you found any value in this episode, please help us spread the word by subscribing to the podcast. And if you have any questions, comments or suggestions, please get in touch using the links in the show notes. We really hope to see you next time. 'Cause I found my way.